Okay, so welcome to our next group. Jennifer, I'm going to turn this over to you, and I'm going to hop off and stop talking now.
Sweet. Thank you, Jody. First of all, what a great morning. We're going in at 12:30, and it's been just awesome to hear all these amazing supply chain geeks sharing their experiences. I'd love to welcome Kevin Berisso, who is self-proclaimed barcode and RFID geek. And Kevin has quite an interesting background. So today we've brought him on. And Kevin, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your role in the AIDC industry?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I definitely appreciate this on behalf of AIM and the Material Handling Education Foundation, AIDC100 as well. Definitely appreciate our inclusion. This is what you guys have set up has been great. I've been listening in on some of the sessions earlier and have really enjoyed it. So great job to you guys on this. Yeah, my background is I started undergrad at Ohio University in a program called Industrial Technology, and we described ourselves as technical generalists, which basically means we played with anything and everything manufacturing-wise and knew enough to really get ourselves in a lot of trouble, but we're not necessarily a machinist or a welder or a casting and mold design expert, but we understood all those technologies. And one of the classes I took was an automatic identification class with my professor and the department chair at the time, Dr. James Fales. And it was one of those things where looking back on it, and even at the time, I kind of said, well, this seems kind of cool and kind of neat. And yeah, okay, I'm in a engineering college, so I'm already defined as the nerd geek subset anyway, but really enjoyed it and got into it. And so as I progressed through my career and as I made decisions moving past there, they were always ultimately really kind of defined by, does this allow me to play with barcodes? Does this allow me to play with RFID? And if the answer was no, I found myself actually going, maybe I'll go in that direction instead. I've worked as a warehouse management software consultant, as a project engineer doing integration for companies like Colgate-Palmolive and Pillsbury and Sterling Diagnostic, which was a spinoff from DuPont once upon a time, and it's been sold off a bunch of other times. But it was always, how do we help the customer use the right technology at the right time? I caught a little bit of the discussion with Zebra and heard something about technologies that were sort of ahead of their time. And one of the things we were doing, and this was back in 1996, was the precursor to Wi-Fi. It was all radio frequency data collection was the term at the time because there were no wires. So I was doing that at that point, went and worked for Delphi Automotive for a little while doing manufacturing, but decided to get back into education and get to a point where I could actually be doing barcode RFID type research. So my involvement in this industry really started in 1993. And in 1994, I went and worked for my department chair and the director of the Automatic Identification Lab at Ohio University on this week-long summer course he puts on for educators, and it's train-the-trainer type of concept, where AIM was sponsoring it at the time, and they actually started sponsoring this back in 1986. And so the educational efforts within the industry have gone back that far, at least. But the idea is you bring in these educators, you bring in people from Zebra, people from Honeywell. At the time, it would have been Symbol, it would have been Intermec, it would have been PSC, Medtronic, so on and so forth. But we were bringing in the industry leaders and the industry integrators to talk to the educators and say, okay, it's all well and good that you think it should work this way, but the reality is it works this way. And so it was a way to get the educators up to speed and to correctly teach these topics back to their classes. And so I was introduced to AIM that summer as a result of that, and and heavily invested and introduced into the industry at that point. AIM, for however many years that is now, has been supporting education within the supply chain, within automatic identification. A number of the companies that you have speaking, as I look through the list, have been and are and continue to be huge supporters of the efforts I do here at the University of Memphis, where when I left Ohio University, because I taught there for a while as well as going there for undergrad, I brought that workshop with me, and we do that in the summers, and we were actually supposed to do it this summer, and with everything happening, we obviously had to cancel it, unfortunately. But the Material Handling Education Foundation, AIDC100, AIM, as well as, I want to make sure I get this right before I forget, who else? Where did the list go? I had it on here somewhere. Ah, there it is. As well as Avery Dennison, Aware Innovations, Pathguide Technologies, were sponsoring bringing educators to the University of Memphis to give them that high level and low level, down in the weeds education on how all these technologies work. And so the fact that you guys have this summit today is wonderful. The AIM is the Industry Association for Automatic Identification. The AIDC100 is a group of individuals who have played a significant impact in the industry over the years. It's generally older folks, people that have literally invented barcode technologies, printer technologies, things like that are members of this organization. And their goal is to help industry to understand how AIDC should be used, where it should be used, when it should be used. The Material Handling Education Foundation, I think I heard someone mention the Dilling funds earlier. AIDC 100, in conjunction with the Material Handling Education Foundation, have been kind of monitoring and controlling that Dilling fund and using that money to help with automatic identification types of education activities and supporting faculty, supporting efforts, things like that. The Material Handling Institute, MHI, also has a group called the College Industry Council on Material Handling Education, which is a huge mouthful and goes by the rather odd acronym of KICME. But they also, yeah, we kind of walk ourselves into that one. But they also do a lot of training and education in this area. And so I teach robotics, I teach automation, I teach automatic identification as a class, but I integrate the barcode and RFID components into both of those classes, the robotics and the automation, so that all of my students are coming out of the program with an understanding of how automation impacts the supply chain, how it impacts the data collection, and even though people tend to take it for granted, that at the end of the day, it is the automatic identification that allows the supply chain to really function. Yes, we need trucks. Yes, we need the people. Yes, we need the materials. But at the levels that they have to do things, the only way to efficiently do it, realistically, ends up being scan a barcode, have an RFID reader scan something. And those technologies are all too often, I think, overlooked. And so one of my goals, one of the goals of AIM, the AIDC 100 and Material Handling Education Foundation, is to make sure that we continue to keep the core basic technologies in everyone's mind so that they are not being neglected and are being leveraged to allow companies to be that much more successful, more efficient, more profitable, so on and so forth.
We say at Barcoding, efficient, accurate, and connected.
Yes, I definitely like those taglines.
Yeah. What kind of research have you done, or any sort of interesting technologies that you've run across in your careers thus far?
So research-wise, as far as interesting and exciting, is probably questionable. My wife usually just rolls her eyes at me, but
Well, that's why we're all supply chain geeks.
exactly. One of the things I've recently finished was I scanned 2.3 billion characters looking at the robustness of the error correction in data matrix, QR codes, Aztec code, PDF 417, because there's this assumption in the industry that if you need 100% accurate data, you want to go with the symbology that supports error correction so that not only does it detect it, it fixes it so you don't have to go, oh, well, I can't read that barcode after all, so I'll have to key it in and hope that the operator doesn't make a mistake. This has been taken as gospel for decades that Reed-Solomon is the correct answer. I don't see any reason for it to not be, but no one was able to point to any research that was definitively showing from a statistical point of view, from a large volume data point of view, that yes, you're going to get the performance you expect. Now, I assume that Honeywell, Zebra, Data Logic probably have all that data buried somewhere in their corporate memory, but it's probably also proprietary. And so one of the nice things about being education is I can go out, do those types of studies, and be able to make that information publicly available so that when someone in the medical industry responding to the UDI requirement says, okay, you told me I have to use data matrix because it has the error correction. Can you show me any evidence that it is as accurate as you say it is? And so now we have this research that supports that. I've been involved in research with GS1, the group that, basically I tell people it's the group that controls the UPC code on every product that you go and buy in the store. But I've done lots of work with them trying to test for the impacts of changes to the size of the barcode. We've done simulated runs of equipment running at 660 feet a minute so that when you put barcodes on a high-speed sortation system, you have the confidence that it's going to be read the first time, every time. And one of the things I've been involved with as well has been verification, checking and giving the barcode a grade of, is it an A grade barcode, which means I'm going to read it very easily every time? Or is it an F grade barcode, which means, yes, I can read it, but sometimes it's pulling the trigger 3 or 4 times or moving the package past the scanner a whole bunch of times or something along those lines. And in a high-speed situation, you obviously don't want that. And so we've looked at stuff like that. I've worked with Bluetooth Low Energy and trying to decide, is there a realistic, practical upper limit to the number of devices that you can have in a given area by a given receiver before you overload it, because there are just too many messages coming into this single receiver, and it's like 30 or 40 people talking to you simultaneously. And can you parse all of those discussions at the same time successfully? And there are going to be limits, and there are theoretical limits, and then there is reality, unfortunately. And so because of that technical generalist background I have, I tend to look at things from very much of an applied point of view. So, okay, great, we've got the theory out there. Now let's see if the reality of how the companies have implemented the technology match up with that theory.
It's super fascinating and so valuable, especially what you're saying about even rating, like how much time can be wasted if you're rescanning something over and over again. And I attended a few of the GS1 presentations that Peter Zielinski had put together at Modex and ProMat, and it's super fascinating to really understand, it's not just about following that item, but how it passes hands throughout. And I think that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, GS1, and I do them a disservice by saying they're the people that control the UPC code, because realistically what they are doing is they are helping to set all of the unofficial, informal standards, as well as some of the ISO written standards on how do companies communicate between each other. It's that business to business, and to a lesser degree, the business to consumer data communications that allow the barcode RFID technology to talk to computer systems so that when I go to Walmart.com, Lowe's.com, Kroger.com, whatever, and I'm trying to find out information, that the information on those sites is correct and accurate, so that I can order what I need or find out, do I even waste the time going into Lowe's looking for this item I need when it's obvious they don't have it and their computer systems are able to very easily tell me, yeah, come back in a week.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, I was feeling inspired here, but you know, we're currently distancing, so maybe cookouts aren't happening very often, but what exactly do you tell people not in this industry that you do every day?
So because I am more of the applied side, I don't do the low-level research.
Mm-hmm.
So I am not, so for robotics, I talk about something called kinematics, which is how the robot physically moves. I spend 30 seconds talking about it in my robotics class. In AutoID, I spend 3 seconds talking about Reed Solomon. I say, okay, there's a bunch of maths called Reed Solomon. It allows you to do the error correction. I let people that are much smarter than I am handle all that stuff. And my passion and my love really comes back to the integration side. I enjoy saying, oh, well, how hard can it be? Or what could go wrong as I try to get the barcode scanner to talk to the robot and the programmable logic controller via a third-party human-machine interface that is connected to a web server and trying to be controlled from England here in Memphis. That's what I enjoy. So I leave all the down in the weeds technical stuff to other people. That's the only thing I try not to play with.
I think it's fascinating. Your job is to find where it breaks and then figure out behind it. That's super interesting. I don't think there's any question as to why you are a supply chain geek.
Yep, and I'm going for the mantle of the geekiest background. So what we're looking at here is actually the insides of an old AccuSort barcode scanner. It's a helium neon laser, and so you're over my shoulder here. What you're seeing in the background is actually part of the laser tube, and this was a demo model or something that had a plexiglass front on it and would actually scan barcodes. Unfortunately, I don't have it anymore, but yeah, so that's what the inside of an old laser barcode scanner would actually have looked like.
That is so cool. Okay, do we have, let me double check to see if we've got any audience questions today. I haven't seen anything. Well, it looks like here someone's saying they were on the, oh, is this the one that you're saying, the Kick Me Council for a CICHME Council for a number of years?
Yep,
Standard Forces. They think it's a great organization, that you are right. It really bridged the gap between academia and practice, which is just so important.
Definitely. All too often, academics, unfortunately, we get stuck in a mindset of, oh, well, it should be this way, and why wouldn't it be this way? Having worked in industry, I fortunately am somewhat immune to that, although I get bad about saying, oh, well, it should be this way, and then I try to do something and can't figure out why it doesn't work the way I expected it to. But I think it's important that we as academics are getting the students who are going to be the next generation of supply chain geeks, supply chain innovators, and even just people that execute the supply chain activities. If they don't understand the technology, then they're going to be making assumptions and doing and approaching things potentially incorrectly, which is just going to be bad for everybody all around.
So do you really recommend, especially when people are already on the field, they've gone through education, that they really look up these organizations and continue to be part of it and be able to share back those real world experiences that they have?
Yeah, that's absolutely critical. MHI does a couple of reports every year, industry reports, and one of the nice things and things I really love about MHI is the reports are free. You can just download them. You don't have to go spend $8,000 or $10,000 like you do for some of the Gartner reports and some of these other reports that have excellent information in them, but are very expensive because of how they've had to generate the data. MHI, through the benevolence, I guess, of their members, is able to generate this information, and they put together an excellent report that allows people to get a good view into what is going on in the industry and what needs to happen and where the new up and coming pain points may be, so that they can be prepared ahead of time.
Great. So we have a question here. What do you see as the next big thing in supply chain traceability technology?
Most people you ask are going to say blockchain, I think, for that immediately. I think there is definitely a lot of potential there. Auburn University and their, excuse me, their research center is doing a lot of work on the applied side for that, where they're trying to take what's called the EPCIS data, the RFID data and activity, and get that into a blockchain so that we have that traceability, that transparency potentially available. The big question and concern I have with that is, and I think it's going to be solvable, it's just a matter of who, how, and when, is how to ensure that that data is being consumed correctly and fast enough, because we're talking about probably billions of transactions a day if you go across the entire supply chain, into the blockchain. And then can I, as a consumer, go and check on whether or not my lettuce came from a organic farm that hasn't had any problems, or is this lettuce part of the recall, so that we can have targeted recalls that are not saying, okay, well, we're not really sure where the lettuce went, so we're gonna have to recall all the romaine again, or whatever it is. But we can say, okay, this store got some and that store got some, but the store next to it didn't, type of a scenario. I think that's probably what we're realistically headed towards as far as traceability. AIM has a number of committees, and if you become an AIM member, and I encourage everyone on the call to look into it, I think it's an excellent organization. They've obviously supported me for a lot of years, going back to '93, but we have a number of committees, standing committees. One of them is a track and trace committee. We have an RFID experts group. There's a technical symbology committee, which is involved with developing new barcodes and coming up with the standards. Then Impinj is going to talk about this a little bit later today. I saw there's also the RAIN RFID Alliance, which is an AIM alliance. And so I would say that is probably what's going on. And if you want to join AIM, and if you want to come join the meeting, feel free to reach out to me, and I can arrange for you to have guest privileges for a couple of our meetings to come and hear what we're doing in the track and trace committee. And that is going to give you a nice insight into what is coming down the road.
Muted myself. Wonderful, thank you. That is a great answer. And then another question here. So do you see the barcode remaining prominent, or do you expect RFID or other technology to move in?
So the barcode in some form, I personally believe, will never go away. There are advantages to it over other technologies. One of them being on packaged goods. Even if we move more and more, or as we move more and more towards serialization on products, there are going to be products where it does not really make a whole lot of sense to serialize. Think of anything under $1, gum, things like that. And the reality is, once I've generated that barcode image and put it in embedded it into my packaging, I don't have any additional cost per unit that it's applied to with RFID tags. Even if we get them to under $0.01 cent a tag, at half a cent a tag or $0.25 cent a tag, that is still an incremental cost on the item. Now, some items, I totally agree, it makes sense. Let's embed them into the laptops. Let's embed them into TVs, into higher dollar items. If you are concerned about brand protection, putting RFID into the packaging or into the product makes a whole lot of sense. But if it's something that you're not really concerned about the brand protection, you just want to be able to sell billions of eyeglass microfiber cleaners, putting something other than a barcode on it to allow for that point of sale data capture to get the right price, there's not a whole lot of room to argue that it makes sense to add additional cost. Digimarc is a company that's an AIM member who's working on the ability to embed data into images that will work the same as a barcode. It's programmable data. And so the barcode as we see it today may not exist in 15 or 20 years, but a machine optically readable technology, which is really what a barcode is, I believe will always be around. And I'm happy to have that debate with whoever wants to have that debate offline for as long as they want, because I know that people have been predicting the death of the barcode due to RFID for 20 years now. But it's been 20 years and I don't see the barcode going anywhere. It's getting smaller, it's being changed how it's being used, but it still is a very powerful tool in the right use. RFID is a very powerful tool in the right use, but those two use cases don't always overlap.
That's very true. I think that in my industry, that equates to sort of the print is dead type of, and here we see it's changed in form. Maybe, there's different applications, but one doesn't necessarily exactly replace the other.
Right.
Right. Cool. Well, we've got 5 minutes here. Thank you so very much. Wait, I see another question pop in. Any comments around indoor positioning systems, not just for social positioning, but as a means of process control?
So there are a number of companies that are offering what a lot of people are starting to call passive real-time locating systems, passive RTLS. Zebra is one of them. And those technologies are good. They're not great. The accuracy generally is down to a couple feet, depending on the coverage, depending on the tags, depending on what's being tagged. And so there is a lot of potential use there. There's a lot of potential low-hanging fruit there. And so an example is I have a student who is planning to do his senior design project using a product from a company called RF Controls, which is a passive RTLS solution. And they allow for 2 to 3 feet accuracy. And what he was going to do is take surgical instrument and component trays from companies like Medtronic, Zimmer, Wright Medical, Onyx, whomever, where there's a bunch of parts for a surgery in it, and it's been sterilized. And generally speaking, the way those are used is they're on consignment. And so if I'm Medtronic, I send a surgery kit to the local hospital. The surgeon uses it for a hip replacement, but doesn't use all the pieces and parts in it because there are different sizes depending on the size of the human body that's being worked on and what is needed, what's not needed. And when they're done, they send the kit back and are billed only for the items that are used. The process of determining what was used and what wasn't used tends to be somewhat labor intensive and manual. And so companies will set up workstations and the kit will come in and they'll process kit, replenish what's needed, certify that everything's there, send it out for re-sterilization so it can go back out into the field. And so the student is working on a system that will allow the company he was doing an internship at to more easily track where are those kits at the workstations. And so you can put a single antenna 20, 25 feet up in the air, it'll read a dozen or half a dozen workstations and it's able to say, okay, the following kits are at station 1, station 2, Jody has it, Jennifer has it, Kevin has it, whomever has it. We can look at process rates, how fast are the kits being moved in and out of the workstations. If there's a specific kit that's needed, If it's not circuit trays, but maybe it's refab work in the aerospace industry where they're bringing in components and getting them refurbished to be sent back out. I need to know where this part is, this order is that we're working on. You can then easily track its location. And so there's a lot of potential value and a lot of well thought out ROI examples in that industry if it's used and selected appropriately. Simultaneously, you could try to stuff it into a scenario that may not be the best, and it's going to have a lot of trouble and it's going to look bad. So you really do need to be talking to the systems integrators, the manufacturers, Zebra, whomever, to discuss how to use the technology. Is it appropriate? Is it not appropriate? What needs to be done and what caveats need that to happen in order to make sure it's successful? Long-winded, I know.
I want to thank you again very much, Kevin, for being here today. I've learned a lot from you and also learned that there's a lot more that I don't know about this industry. So I really appreciate your time. And if anyone wants to reach out to Kevin, any additional questions, go ahead and send us a message and we'll put you in touch.
Yeah.
Happy to chat with anyone that needs to chat about things.
Kevin, I'm going to break my designer's heart right now and say that your backdrop does win the day. I mean, I never would have thought that we could see someone in a scanner, but it just, that's next level. It's really good.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.